Okay, I have sat down with a cup of tea. Actually, I already drank it. Uh, it was rosemary tea. It probably should have been mugwort tea because of what we're going to be talking about today. This is going to be the third installation in the Astral Projection series. And finally, we get to part 3, how to do it. All right. These techniques are quite easy to find online. Okay, but there might be a few surprises here. Okay, Um particularly the first part. So before we plunge into the methodology, I want to address something about astral projection because a number of you have been contacting me saying that, well, shouldn't the magician be able to project his or her astral body while he or she is awake? Okay, um, sort of. Okay. And so the methods that I'm showing you are the easy way. Pretty much they are lucid dreaming practices. Okay. And so let's talk about what happens when you develop the ability to project your astral body at will. All right, so I've already done a video on the 4 worlds, and as you might recall, I have compared the 4 worlds to levels of consciousness, where Asiya, let's do Kabbalah real fast. Asiya is the supposed physical world. Yetzira is the astral world. Okay. Bariya is the world of creation above the astral plane, and Atziluth is the world of emanation. Now, if we relate these to layers of consciousness, Asiya is your waking day world state of consciousness when you're running around paying bills, playing soccer, things like that. Yetzira would be the dream world or the world of imagination. Okay, and something very important about that, the world of imagination and the dream world is always present. It's not only present at night, it's present while you are supposedly awake during the day. Okay? The thing about nighttime, the nighttime dream world, is that the imagination becomes free of the physical constraints. Okay? So when you are within your physical constraints, when you're in your daily waking world practices, day world practices, activities, your imagination is still up and running, and it is still superimposing all kinds of categories and boxes and images upon the world that it sees. Okay? And it is also presenting that world to you as various things, conceptualized things. Okay? And when you go to sleep at night, the material influence sort of goes away for the most part, and then the imagination is free to continue sort of doing what it's been doing. And now it has free reign to sort of create all kinds of images, and it's not necessarily creating images that are based on physical reality anymore, though most of them or many of them are. Okay. All right. So Bariya then is the world beyond that, and that is the level of consciousness where most of us will black out. Okay, that's because at the level of Bariya, that's where subjects and objects originate. Okay, and you can't really have ordinary human consciousness without a subject and an object. So at the level of Bariya, the whole notion of the perceiver and the perceived, or you and the things that you can look at, and you and the things you can experience, that is being born there. Okay, and it's also disappearing there. So if you're going up the tree, that goes away, it dies. Okay, if you're coming down the tree, it's being born. So in the level of Bariya, that's where the subject and object separate, and then you can now perceive things. So in Yetzira, you have all kinds of subject-object relationships going on. Okay, and it can get very complicated very fast. And of course, in Asiya, you have zillions of subject-object relationships going on. And at the level of Absolute, this is pure, that's the world of pure potentiality. Okay, all these worlds are present in your consciousness at any given time. While you're sleeping at night, Asiya is barely there at all. Okay, and Yetzirah tends to dominate. Well, it depends. So if you go into deep sleep, you can go all the way up to Buriya and Absolute. Okay, when you're dreaming, Yetzirah seems to be the one that's most active, though all the worlds are active all the time. Now, in order to experience a sort of transition from your physical body to your astral body, okay, you pay attention to the junction point between Asiya and Yetzirah. That's the physical world and the astral world, okay? And at the top of Asiya, we have a sphere called Kether. And at the bottom of Yetzirah, we have the sphere called Malkuth, okay? These are the trees, as you can tell, these are 4 trees of life stacked on top of each other. This is the way that the Golden Dawn taught the interlinking of the 4 worlds. And so let's look at some of the stuff that the Golden Dawn has said about the 4 worlds. All right, so here we have a close-up of this one right here. This sphera is the Kether of Asiya. That's the highest sphera of the physical world. Okay, and then this right here is the Malkuth of Yetzirah. That's the lowest sphera of the astral world. Okay, and in order to transfer your consciousness to your astral body, you supposedly have to get through this sort of junction point right here in the center. And so what you'll notice is that, wow, things just diminish. If so you're going up from Asiya to Yetzirah. Things diminish until they're gone. And then somehow they come back again and they reemerge in the astral world. Okay? This is an interesting concept, okay? Now I've heard, I think it was a Zen master or something like that, who, I don't remember the source. There's so many things I've read, I can't remember the source anymore. But he would say that he is conscious almost all the time now, like he's completely awake. Okay, so he never gets taken over by subconscious complexes. Okay, he never gets possessed and loses his mind or anything like that, except while he's drifting off to sleep. And he says there's a point usually when I'm drifting off to sleep where I lose consciousness, but then once I'm past the threshold of sleep and I'm sleeping, then I become aware again. And he claims that he can be aware on all the different levels of the higher worlds. Okay, so he can maintain his awareness even where most of us would black out in dreamless sleep. Okay, and all the way up to the highest world of Absolute, or I guess he would probably call it Turiya or something like that, but the highest level, a world of pure potentiality or pure radiance. And he can maintain his awareness through all of those worlds. But there's usually a vanishing point for him when he's drifting off to sleep. So we can talk about this. So in order for you to enter the astral plane at will, you're kind of up against this sort of zone of unconsciousness. You're kind of drifting off into, it seems like you're diminishing, and then you are completely non-existent for a second, and then you reemerge as existent again on the astral plane. All right. So it's kind of like becoming unmanifest for a bit and then becoming manifest again, but on a higher level of reality, so to speak. So this sort of hourglass shape thing, or this sort of these cones of power that you see here, They're also like triangles of manifestation. So when you look at a triangle of manifestation, or what some people call a thaumaturgic triangle, that triangle, the uppermost point is where things disappear into unmanifestation. And of course, at the bottom of the triangle, that's the manifestation. That's the opposites have now emerged, or you could say the subject-object relationship has now emerged, and now we can start to perceive things. Hence, you have manifestation. Okay. So the interesting thing is that as you go up to that apex of the triangle, the subject-object relationship winks out, and you sort of lose consciousness. Okay, and then as you enter the astral world, you regain consciousness again. It's like, oh, I'm lucid, I can see things. Okay. So if you want to enter the astral world, you seem to be up against this sort of like barrier where things disappear and you black out, and then you reemerge on the other side and everything is glowing again. All right. This is the origin of the wizard's hat. So that's this odd shape that various cultic figures would wear. It indicates the power of manifestation from nothingness, from nothing to something, either as a triangle of manifestation on the head or as a cone of power. Okay, and so many people would say that when you circumambulate in ritual, you're creating a cone of power. Yes, you can do that. When you're doing outer order circumambulation, you're only introducing yourself to that effect. You're not necessarily creating cones of power then. So what I'd like to introduce then is that this sort of vanishing point isn't really a vanishing point. The reason it feels like things are like drifting down to absolute nothingness is because you can't take your body with you. You can't take your physical body with you. And so this is why Jesus said a rich man trying to get to heaven is like passing a camel through the eye of a needle, something like that. Of course, the eye of a needle is very vaginal, isn't it? If you remember from previous videos, it's like the way back into the higher worlds is through the vagina. And then the way back out of the higher worlds or the astral world is back out through the vagina. Like, in other words, when you were born, you came out of the astral world or out of the earth. Same thing, really. And when you die, you go back into the earth. And that's back into the astral world. And some people would say that when you die, you simply dream. Okay, and for most of us, when you die, it's kind of like being in a dream that's non-lucid. And eventually that, you tumble around in that dream world for a bit, and then eventually will reincarnate again. You'll come back out into the physical world. Might even be true. So what I'd like to propose is that when you guys are doing your banishings, your pentagram rituals and your hexagram rituals, you are expanding that little sphincter there. Okay, so in other words, that vanishing point doesn't need to be an absolute 0 point. It actually can open up, because remember that in both of these levels, this is Asiya down here, this is Yetzirah. Okay, this is the physical world, this is the astral world. Okay, the imagination is active on both of these planes of existence. Okay, so you can't take your physical oriented consciousness with you, but the imagination remains. Okay, so it only seems as though there's a vanishing point, because at some point you have to leave the body behind, or your physicality behind, the world of Asiya. But the world of Yetzirah, the astral plane, permeates all of the physical world. So there really isn't a vanishing point. There's just a point where you have to leave the body behind, but you are still in imagination. So if you're going to be down here in Asiya, you are in imagination. You might want to see it like an ocean of imagination down here. but that ocean of imagination is also up here. Okay, and so you simply pass through that. I don't know what to call that. A sphincter, an isthmus, maybe, or a strait. I guess it's a strait, maybe. And you are still dreaming the way you were dreaming when you were awake, because the dreaming faculty of your consciousness is always operative. Okay, so the imagination is always on, it's always awake. Okay, it's just the mode of functioning that makes it seem like maybe it turns off sometimes, or like you black out, or things like that. Or if you leave the body behind, it seems as though you momentarily lose consciousness simply because you had to drop something you were familiar with. And then you can reemerge. Oh, wait a second, the imagination, it's still on. I just need to switch to another level, okay? Well, what this means is that as you're drifting off to sleep, you can maintain consciousness all the way through, and even experience a point where the dream imagery, or so you're using imagination when you're drifting off to sleep. Imagination is kind of weak while you're in your physical body, and then suddenly it becomes stronger and stronger and brighter and clearer and clearer, and you can actually enter the astral world that way. Okay, and learning to do that while you're drifting off to sleep at night, eventually, I think, trains you to do it even during the day when you are supposedly awake. Okay, so you can eventually train yourself to enter that sleeping state, that dreaming state, whenever you want. Okay, I can't do that yet. All right, but apparently that seems to be what can happen. Oof, I hope that's clear. All right, so let's get down to the practices for inducing lucid dreams so that you can go flying around through the dream world at night. So before sleep, there are some things you can do. One of the easiest things to do is read. All right, I strongly recommend that you do not read with an LED light, or with fluorescent lights, or with even an incandescent bulb, okay? You should read with amber glow light, or by firelight, which would be ideal, or wearing blue blocking glasses, okay? Because remember that any blue light at all in the spectrum, okay, is going to keep your brain from making melatonin, okay? So our ancestors, remember that they evolved so that when the blue sky goes away and it's nighttime, the brain starts making melatonin and you get sleepy. That makes dreams very possible, okay? So if you're going to sit up and read as a means of inducing lucid dreams, you need to basically make sure that you're reading by light that is not suppressing melatonin production. All right. So either read with your blue blocking glasses on, or read with a amber colored antique glow light on, okay, or by firelight. Try not to go to sleep with a fire in the room. That might not be such a good idea. Here are 3 titles I recommend, but any book on lucid dreaming or astral travel or the dream world would be just fine. It's to keep your mind engaged with the importance of what goes on during dreams. This is going to encourage you to wake up during your dreams. Okay, these are 3 excellent titles. I recommend them very highly. But even books on lucid dreaming that are not so good would also be just fine, because they're getting your mind to continuously focus on your desire to wake up during your dreams at night. Incubation. All right. So incubation was an ancient practice in the pre-Socratic and even after the Socrates. When people in the ancient Greek world were sick, there wasn't a lot of high quality intervention style medicine back then. If you became sick, it was difficult to heal, but you could possibly engage in dream practices that would supercharge your immune system, help you let go of things that were causing you stress or things like that. Who knows how these things work? The practice of incubation back in ancient times involved like a pilgrimage to a holy site of Asclepius, and there you would work with the priests of some Greek deity. Okay, didn't necessarily need to be Asclepius or the god of medicine. It could be god of sleep, or it could be any of the gods, because the gods can communicate with you in dreams. Okay. And when you went through your pilgrimage, you traveled to the holy site, you did some ritual purifications, you announced your intention, then you would go to a place called an abaton, where you would basically intentionally go to sleep with the intention of having a dream that was going to heal you. Okay, heal you or possibly give you guidance. Okay, incubation wasn't just for healing; it was also for for divination and things like that too, or even seeking a blessing from the deities. You can do incubation as well. And keep it simple. You can do affirmations, or prayers, or exhortations at night. Okay, I think I'm going to put one. I'll put one affirmation in the video description when I do this, and I'll also put a prayer or an exhortation in there as well. So if you do like just an affirmation, like very simple, I will wake up during my dreams tonight. You want to affirm that several times, like 20 times before going to sleep. Okay, and I would suggest kneeling in front of the bed, at the foot of the bed, when you do it. Or you can get all fancy and do a full-blown exhortation, okay? And that would be, you could just recite that once or two or three times. And so once again, the video description will have both an affirmation in it and an example of an exhortation that you could use. Basically, this is just something that you do before sleep that increases the likelihood of you having a lucid dream, where you can then run around and fly through the sky and things like that. During sleep, all right. So during the night when you're sleeping, one of the most effective ways to induce a lucid dream is waking back to bed. Okay. Now, if you are like me and you basically have clicked your circadian rhythms in place with that of the sun, you might you go to sleep relatively early, and you might wake up during the night, do a little bit of work or something like that, and then go back to sleep again. In other words, sleep in 2 shifts. Okay, this is the way our ancestors used to sleep before electric light came along. Okay, I've talked about this in the video about the 4 adorations. And it's mainly because back in ancient times, everything was lit by fire at night, and fire has almost no blue in it at all. Okay, and so when the blue sky goes away, guess what? Your brain makes melatonin, and you get sleepy really fast. So if you do the biohacking trick where you put on the blue blockers at about 8 o'clock at night, you'll end up going to sleep by maybe 8:30 or 9 o'clock. Yeah, you'll get sleepy really fast because your brain makes melatonin. And of course, you only need about 8 hours on average per night of sleep, and the nighttime can be much longer than that. So what tends to happen if you keep going to bed so early is that you'll eventually end up waking up during the middle of the night for a little bit, do a few things, and then you'll go back to sleep for your second shift of sleep. And guess what? During the second shift of sleep, that's when lucid dreams are most likely to happen. Okay. And of course, getting up at a certain time in the middle of the night, let's say around 2 a.m., is probably about the best. You can maybe do some business around the house. Make sure that you want to keep your eyes protected from any blue light. So put on the blue blockers. Okay. And then when you go back to bed, you can do your exhortation or your prayer or your affirmation. Okay. You can even do a little bit of reading. And when you go back to bed for your second shift of sleep, you are more likely to have a lucid dream. And when you go back to sleep, when you finally lie down to do that, turn the light on. Okay. Probably the best thing would be like an incandescent bulb, or just turn any light on at all at that point, because that blue light is going to increase the likelihood of you waking up in the midst of sleep, if that makes any sense. Okay, it will shut down the melatonin production, but conceivably by then, if you've gone to bed early, you will have gone through enough, your brain will have gone through enough wash cycles. Okay, so you won't need all that melatonin anymore. Okay, so waking back to bed is one of the most effective ways to induce a lucid dream. If you don't sleep in 2 shifts, that's fine. You can set your alarm for 2 a.m. Okay, and then it takes a little bit of willpower. Then you might have to, get up, do your exhortation or your prayer or your incantation, your affirmation. Maybe do a little bit of reading and then go back to sleep for your second shift with the intention of having a lucid dream. Supposedly, sleeping on the right side or on your back is more likely to induce a lucid dream. I haven't noticed that. I tend to sleep all over the place, and I have lucid dreams in any position. But supposedly, sleeping on your right side or on your back induces lucid dreams more often. I'm skeptical. It seems like sleeping on your right side, the right side is very often esoterically associated with consciousness, whereas the left side is associated with subconsciousness. So sleeping on the right side sort of suppresses the conscious. I don't know. I'm not sure those correspondences are necessarily accurate. Sleeping on the back, I don't know what that does necessarily for lucid dreaming. I don't know. All right, and then of course during the night when you are having a lucid dream, what you might find, the first time you have one, is that sometimes it's difficult to stay in the lucid dream. You get excited, and then, now I'm awake. I woke up. Damn it. Okay, so the way to stay lucid in a dream, okay, you have to remember that the dream world is basically remember what we talked about with Beriah and Yetzirah. At Beriah, the subject and object are born, and they separate and become two. That's where they originate and become two. Now you have an observer and an observed, okay? So the dream world is simply, plain and simple, is that observer now observing things. It's you within the theater of your imagination, okay? So in order to maintain a lucid dream, you want to maintain that subject-object relationship. And you can do this by observing things, okay? And so one of the most dramatic ways of doing that is basically approaching the side of a building, and then so that the subject-object relationship between the building and you is now being maintained as you are exploring the surface of that building. And of course, you can climb up the side of the building like Spider-Man, or levitate alongside it, but you're exploring all the nooks and crannies, okay? Or you can creep across the lawn, the grass, and explore all the blades of grass. You can fly above the landscape and observe the landscape beneath you, so that subject-object relationship is being maintained, okay? One of the easiest ways to get out of a lucid dream is to close your eyes in the dream world and go within, okay? And so you turn off that subject-object relationship that's maintaining the dream, and suddenly you begin to become aware of your physical body lying in bed, and oh, now I'm awake, okay? So attempting to meditate while you are in the dream world at night is probably going to wake you up. Sorry. But you might want to establish it as a goal as you get really good with lucid dreaming over the years. You make it as a goal so that you can maintain a state of meditation even while you're asleep at night, and meditate all through the night, okay, without waking up in the bed. Okay, that can be that's the ultimate of dream yoga. Okay, and then of course you maintain awareness all the way to the highest levels of the four worlds. Okay, so you are in that, with that level of expertise, you can maintain consciousness in the physical world, of course, as we all do. You can maintain consciousness in the dream world, but you can also maintain consciousness at the level of Beriya and Atziluth. So even at the level where there are no subjects and objects existing, that's at the level of pure potentiality, where nothing really exists anymore except as potential. You can still maintain your lucidity at that level, which is the world of pure radiance, pure light. Not really describable because, remember, the language we use to describe these things has subjects and objects in it. After sleep. And this is really important. Probably one of the most important things that induces lucid dreams is the dream diary. Okay, and I know it takes willpower or discipline to keep a dream diary because you don't feel like writing in the morning, okay? Well, if you make the habit of doing that, here's something you can do, okay? Because getting up right away to write down your dreams can make you really cranky. Yeah, I understand. What you can do is immediately while you're lying in bed, sort of gearing up to get up, okay, you can rehearse your memories. Okay, so immediately think about, okay, what was I dreaming about? Were there any dreams that I can remember? Go through them and rehearse them a little bit, okay? So review them in your mind while you're lying in bed, okay? Then you're more likely to remember them, and eventually you can get up and then write down what you remember. And remember, when you write down your dreams, you don't need to give a full narrative. Your hand's going to get really tired, okay? Just write down, to keep it short and sweet, just write down the things that happened during the dream as you're reviewing it. Write down the things that happened that should have clued you into the fact that you were dreaming, the dream signs. So just write down the dream signs. In other words, when a character in your dream suddenly becomes a different character and you don't even notice because it seems perfectly natural at the time, that should have been a dream sign right there. Or you walk through a door, and the room that's supposed to be there isn't the room that you thought it was going to be. That should have been a dream sign. It should have been an indication that you were dreaming. Okay, these are the things you want to write down in your dream diary, and nothing else. Okay. If you're absolutely insistent upon not writing things down by hand or typing them into a smartphone, what you can do, and this is pretty cool. I learned this from a Tibetan master. Have a gemstone next to the bed, preferably an amethyst. Okay, and speak your dream into the gemstone. Okay, that's at least a good way to rehearse it. Okay, talk about what happened during the dream, or just review the dream and then speak aloud the various dream signs that should have clued you into the fact that you were dreaming at the time. Okay, speak them into the gemstone, because when you keep a dream journal, you don't necessarily have to go through it. You don't have to go back and read them. It can be very interesting, though, to do that, to go back through and read dreams. I just went back through my dream journal before doing this video, and I went through the lunar calendar to see if there were any correlations between the phases of the moon and lucid dreaming activity. I didn't find any correlations at all. I would have, it seemed at first like I was having more lucid dreams during the new and the full moon, but I found other times when there was a half moon or a crescent moon and I had lucid dreams. So, yeah. I'm still exploring any correlations between the moon and various magical activities. But I don't really find many connections between the actual phases of the moon and magical work. I wonder what you guys have found with that. You might want to put that in the comments. All right, supplements. So if you have an addictive, if you tend to be an addict, I don't know what they call that, an addictive personality. If you were born with an apparent propensity to become addicted to things, okay, that's fairly common among people who pursue magic, because magic is another magic pill for them to go after, okay? It's kind of like, well, instead of doing drugs or alcohol, I'll just do magic. That can be an advantage. In other words, having a sort of an addicted personality means that the subject-object relationship is more powerful, more harshly defined in you than in other people. Okay. The reason for that is that if you have a natural tendency to form addictions, it's that you, the subject over here, feel inadequate being over here without something that you see over there. Okay. Or you, the subject in here, feel threatened by some object over there, out there. Okay, that's the strength of that subject-object relationship is greater, apparently, among addicts than it is among the rest of us who don't get addicted so easily. Okay. The reason I'm going into this is because if you have a propensity to form addictions, be very careful with what I'm about to tell you with these supplements. Okay, don't become so dependent on these things. They're not magic pills. They're certainly not nearly as powerful as some of the drugs that the hardcore drugs that people get addicted to out there. All right, mugwort is the traditional herb associated with lucid dreams. I have tried it. I've done a sachet in the pillow. I have drunk mugwort tea before going to sleep. No effect on me. I haven't noticed anything at all. But still, you might want to try it because it is associated with lucid dreaming, and apparently it works for some people. Even the scent of it can trigger, I guess, lucid dreams. Huperzine A, that's made from Chinese club moss, and I believe now it's made in a laboratory. It's much cheaper to get a synthetic version of it, as far as I know. And yeah, that can also trigger lucid dreams in many people, or increase the likelihood of having them. It's actually a kind of smart drug. I think it makes acetylcholine build up in your brain or something like that, and makes it more likely to have a lucid dream. I've tried it, no effect that I was aware of. Melatonin is obviously you can get melatonin off of the shelf in the grocery store or in the nutrition store. Yeah, that definitely works. You take that and you tend to get sleepy. It's bioidentical to the hormone that you make in your brain, the pineal gland makes in your brain. So when the sun goes down and the blue light goes away, provided you don't expose yourself to any LED lights or fluorescent lights, then your brain will make melatonin, and then you'll get sleepy and you'll have dreams. If you take a relatively large dose of melatonin, be careful with this stuff, okay? It seems to be relatively harmless. You can induce much stronger dreams. Doesn't mean you're going to be lucid, though, but at least the likelihood of dreaming becomes stronger. The likelihood of nightmares becomes stronger, too. Some people claim that melatonin gives them nightmares. I would propose, and if it does, then there's some karma to basically deal with, and it would be very interesting to deliberately take melatonin so you could face that karma and uproot it. And the last one, galantamine. This one works for me. It's the mother of all, as far as I'm concerned, it's the mother of all the lucid dreaming supplements. We used to get it from snowdrop flowers, which are grown in the Carpathian Mountains, like in Bulgaria and Transylvania. And now it's made synthetically, so much cheaper. You can get this online. I think nutrition stores. It's fairly esoteric. It is a supplement that's given to people who have Alzheimer's or dementia. It supposedly helps with that. I think it helps the acetylcholine build up in the brain, something like that. It's the same thing that huperzine A supposedly does. This stuff tends to work very well, for me anyway. And the best time to take it is when you wake back to bed. You wake up around 2 a.m., do a little bit of activity, take the galantamine tablet, go back to sleep. And the chances of having a lucid dream are greatly enhanced, at least for me. Okay, very interesting supplement. Okay, your body does get used to it, so don't take it more than once a week. All right, so you might want to, if you want to do the waking back to bed, maybe on a Friday night, if you don't have to work Saturday, maybe make a Friday night activity out of it. So every Friday night you can do the wake back to bed around 2 a.m. And then on Saturday morning, you might be flying around the astral world, maybe, because of the galantamine, okay? It won't necessarily work that well unless you have the intention of waking amidst your dreams. So you should do the reading or the incubation practices and the journaling as well as taking the galantamine, okay? Don't just be mindful of yourself. Don't just rely on these substances, especially if you have the addictive type personality. Right? I'm noticing a lot of you guys contacting me are recovered from addiction or are suffering from addiction or haven't admitted that you're suffering from addiction yet. All right, so that is the end of the lucid dreaming series, or the astral projection series. As you might begin to gather, if you've been doing banishing rituals like the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, the lesser banishing ritual, the hexagram, what you'll notice is that vanishing point at the top of the wizard's hat kind of opens up for you. It's like those pentagrams are pushing that space out, and that magic circle is opening up that doorway between the worlds. Okay, it's also giving you some control over that doorway too. All right. Sometimes you can develop the impression that the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram is sort of opening up a hole in the midst of your temple space, your magical space, and eventually the ego is going to fall into that hole and die and just disappear. Like, okay, well, that hole through which the ego falls in and dies is also the doorway to the astral world, or to the higher planes, or the deeper planes of existence. Okay, and so once again, that vanishing point doesn't need to be an absolute vanishing point. It actually can sort of open up into the higher world, or into the deeper world. Okay, many people experience going into the higher worlds as going down, as a descent into the underworld. Okay, or as a receding into the background, disappearing from the physical world and then going into the background behind the scenes of the physical world. Okay. Whatever seems to work for you, all of them seem to work. What you'll begin to notice is that those daily banishings are conditioning you so that you can make that transition from the physical world to the astral world without sort of blacking out for a little bit. You can maintain your awareness across that threshold, okay? Because that sort of vanishing point is now opened up, and your awareness continues unbroken through the transition. Okay, I hope that's clear. All right, until next time.